police officer has been suspended from all duties after a viral video shows a man being kicked in the head.
Oh boy. Today we're going to ask the question of, can the police assault you? Can the police punch you, kick you, gash you with pepper spray? And what to do if you feel you are under threat by the police. In the media recently, there have been plenty of examples as when the conduct of police officers has come under scrutiny. A few notorious cases are the Manchester Airport incident and also the fatal shooting of Chris Kabar in 2022 by a firearms officer. So today we're going to cover the reasons as to what police have to fulfil in order to use force, how far the police can go with that use of force, and the legislation which police must abide by when considering to use force on somebody. That can be from as little as handcuffing somebody to discharging a firearm. Now this is going to be the most likely reasons as to why the police will use force. However, I do encourage you to do your own research as well if this is a topic that you are interested in. And at the end of the video, I'm going to also go through what to do if you are confronted by the police and you believe that force is going to be used on you.
You're under arrest. Arrest?
The first and most primary piece of legislation is Section 117 of the Police and Criminal Evidence Act 1984. This is basically the golden egg of policing. Ironically, the year this was made was 1984, make Orwell fiction again. With this legislation, police must use reasonable force when effecting an arrest or to subdue a threat. That means that police cannot just run over to you and hit you with a baton. It means that police cannot restrain you on the floor if you're being completely compliant. And it also means police can't use handcuffs if they don't feel that there is a necessity to do so. Everything has to be reasonable, proportionate, and justified. And this is the mainframe what police officers have to work through when they are interacting with a member of the public, interacting with somebody who they believe may pose some kind of threat. The police cannot just assault you for no good reason, they must have justification for doing it. An example from myself when I was in the police was a male was being incredibly violent. I tried to talk to him, that didn't work, so then I went to effect an arrest. I went to put handcuffs on him. He then pulled back and started to push me. I then used my pepper spray to help subdue him. That didn't work. His behaviour kept on escalating, therefore my level of force needed to escalate in order to subdue that threat. So as you see here, you start minimum and then you go all the way up. And this is one of the reasons why I believe the UK police officers shouldn't routinely carry firearms, because if you carry a firearm, then you're more inclined to use it. Whereas one thing the UK police have in their toolbox, which is, I believe, very, very good, is their ability to talk to people. If the police can talk to somebody and someone feels heard and understood, they're less likely to escalate, less likely to become violent. However, there are some individuals out there who, no matter how kind and how relaxed and how calm the police officer is, they will escalate, and therefore the officer has to escalate too. It's a very fine balancing act, and the officers that I've seen that get the most assaulted are the officers that can't talk to people. They go in like a bull in a china shop. I'm the police, you need to do as I say. Well, people don't always respond very well to that. It upsets people, it gets people agitated, and it's more likely to escalate if that is the attitude of the police officer.
Knock it off! There's a kid back there!
I'm in danger!
Equally, I've seen police officers who are being completely fine, members of the public, and the member of the public has escalated their behaviour anyway, and thus force has then had to be used to complete the objective of the officer, be that an arrest or a stop and search. So every action of the police needs to be justified. So say if the police officer strikes someone with a baton, that needs to be justified. If they decide to strike somebody again with a baton, that also needs to be justified. The strongest tool in a police officer's arsenal is their voice. And before we get to physical strikes, we get to discharging of tasers and even discharging firearms, I would always say the voice and being able to speak to somebody properly is the best way for a police officer to conduct themselves. But like I also said, sometimes that just ain't working and more force needs to be used. When it comes to something like handcuffing, there are certain forces out there where it's policy to handcuff everybody, but policy doesn't dictate law. So even if it is forced policy to handcuff somebody, the officer still needs to justify that decision as to why that person needs to be handcuffed. If Mrs. Miggins, who's 80 years old, is being completely calm and compliant, the police officers may have more difficulty justifying a handcuff on Mrs. Miggins than Joe Bloggs, who's been on steroids for the past 12 months, has had way too much marching powder and wants to fight everybody. When it comes to what kind of force the police can use, it can be pretty much limitless. Police can go from speaking to somebody, to holding on to somebody in an escort position, to guide them somewhere, to discharging firearms and using lethal force. It all depends on the threat posed. And with every escalation of force being used, the police need to justify that. There are also powers which apply to not just the police, but to everybody. Everybody in the UK is covered under common law. And under common law, you can use what's used as a preemptive strike. And a lot of people don't know this. We are raised to believe that you can only defend yourself if someone hits you first. That is not the case. We've seen many cases in the news of one-punch knockouts, or where somebody's pushed somebody over in the middle of the street and that person's banged their head and passed away. To say someone needs to be assaulted before they can defend themselves actually puts the person more at risk, because they're waiting to be struck and assaulted before they can do anything about it. A preemptive strike, very simply put, is, and I advise people to go off and do their own research on this if you ever consider using this, a preemptive strike is the ability to defend yourself if you believe you are under threat. So one example of this is when I was in the police, I needed to arrest an individual who's being quite violent, very argumentative, and I went to take hold of his arm. He pulled away and he looked like he was going to headbutt me. So then, as a preemptive strike, I struck him first with an elbow. The situation went a bit volatile after that. The male was eventually arrested and successfully detained. So I had to justify that, and I had to justify that quite strongly, because it doesn't look good when it looks like a police officer just hit someone for no reason. I believe that my personal safety was in jeopardy. The guy looked like he was about to headbutt me. He was a big, muscular bloke, taller than me, much bigger, much stronger, and he'd already been quite volatile, quite argumentative, and he started to pull away, and also, I believe, like I said, was about to be assaulted. So I used a preemptive strike to defend myself, of which then he was successfully arrested. So when it comes to the members of the public, you can apply this law too. If you're walking down the street and someone gets right in your face and starts screaming at you, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that, and you fear for your personal safety, you are absolutely covered under the law if you use a preemptive strike. Of course, and again, like I said, it needs to be justified, needs to be proportionate, and needs to be reasonable. Police also have to take into consideration people's human rights, prohibition of torture, so handcuffing, use of taser, restraints, prolonging unnecessary suffering is against the Convention of Human Rights, and police officers also need to be very aware of this. Police officers are trained, and they're trained quite effectively when it comes to takedowns, use of handcuffing, application of handcuffing, stop and search, etc., because there is so much scrutiny about it. So the police officers need to be trained quite well in that field of their role. Police officers are trained on how to help people get up once they've been subdued and arrested, how to do aftercare with somebody if they've been pepper sprayed, how to best speak to somebody, how to best hold somebody so that they can hear properly, how to restrain somebody. So yes, it causes discomfort, but isn't life-threatening or doesn't cause any issues with breathing. Do police officers sometimes lose their head and get a bit of red mist? Of course, police officers are human. Are there times when police officers go too far, where they may use too much force, or they may not be completely focused on their training and just trying to subdue the threat? Of course, people are human. And before we start criticising police on their use of force or how they behaved in a certain situation, you need to understand that police officers deal with incredibly stressful, incredibly difficult incidents all the time, and it would be wrong of somebody to sit on an armchair or on a YouTube video or on Facebook or whatever to apply their logic and reasoning when they've never been in any kind of situation like that, what they're seeing there and then in their entire lives. So I think a little bit of understanding and empathy needs to be given when it comes to police. However, that of course doesn't mean they're above the law. The police still need to act in the realms of the law. I just get very tired of armchair detectives sitting there going, well, I would have done that better and I would have done this. No, you fucking wouldn't have done. If you're so interested, if you just think you can do a better job, join the special constabulary, become a volunteer in the police, and go on the town centre on a Friday night, and let's see how calm and focused and relaxed you are then. It'll make you or break you, I assure you. There is also section 3 of the Criminal Law Act 1967, which it says right here, a person may use such force as is reasonable in the circumstances in the prevention of crime or in effecting or assisting in the lawful arrest of offenders or suspected offenders or persons unlawfully at large. What this means is that reasonable force, the amount of force used, must be proportionate to the threat or situation. Excessive or unnecessary force is not allowed, and this can only be used to prevent crime from occurring, lawful arrest someone someone or assist in their arrest. So this is a power which police officers can use, but it also means that a police officer can instruct a member of the public to assist them in effecting an arrest. This also applies to a citizen's arrest. So if you see somebody assaulting somebody, or you see somebody who's just committed a burglary or some kind of serious theft, then a citizen's arrest allows you to use reasonable force in order to detain that person, to then allow the police to arrest them. However, this applies to indictable offences only, and if you see somebody who has littered a can of Coke at the side of the street, doesn't mean you can go with a baseball bat, threaten them, and make them get on the phone until the police arrive. Chances are you'll be the one who comes in the back of the police wagon if that is the case. So what should you do if you are confronted by the police? Well, first thing you could do is you can ask the police officer to see their warrant card. Every police officer carries a warrant card, and even if they are in plain clothes, you can still say, I want to see your warrant card. The police officer then has to show you that warrant card. It's their ID, it's their identification that they are a warranted officer of the Crown and that they are lawfully able to do what they want to do. If you're able to do so, you can also call the police and ask if this officer is a real police officer. And if you are feeling comfortable, ask a member of the public to help you, in which they can stand there with their phone out and record this interaction. The police officer, if they're in uniform, should have a body-worn camera, and that should be turned on. You can instruct that to be turned on, and the police officer should tell you if it's turned on. Sometimes officers forget, not all the time police officers remember, but the police officer should tell you that you are being recorded. If you are being stopped and searched, the police need to provide you with the grounds of the search, the object they're searching for. They have to provide you their warrant card, the identity of the officer, the station they work at, the legislation of which they're conducting the search, and they must tell you that you are detained. Now, when it comes to being detained, they can then use handcuffs and use reasonable force if you then resist. So in a nutshell, if the police decide that they're going to stop and search you, you will be stop and searched. They're going to stop and search you. If you want a friend to record the interaction on their phone, that's absolutely fine. But if you resist, or you pull away, or you cause more issues, then chances are the escalation of force will get greater. The police already suspect that you have something on you you shouldn't have, and you being argumentative and not wanting to be searched will only further increase that suspicion, therefore increasing the likelihood that force will be used in order to effect that search. Even if nothing's found on you, the police are still covered under law to use reasonable force in order to complete that stop and search, providing the stop and search criteria is fulfilled. And what has happened in the past is when I've stopped and searched people, my grounds were there to stop and search them absolutely fine, and I've put the handcuffs on them because they've been argumentative, they've been quite volatile. Then once they've been stop and searched, there was actually nothing on them. They didn't have what I thought they had on them, but due to their demeanour and the way they were behaving, I've then arrested them for another offence. So if that person was simply just compliant and allowed me to do my job, they had nothing to hide, then they would be stop and searched, nothing would be found, and they would be given Know Your Rights card, and they would be free to go about their business and be free to leave. The same as if you are going to be arrested by the police. The police can use force, the police have batons, they have tasers, they have pepper spray, they have also a lot of backup, so comply. Nobody wants to be arrested. It's not like people wake up in the morning and go, oh, I can't wait to get nicked today. Nobody wants to be arrested, but if you do find yourself on the wrong side of the law, you can make a complaint later. You can take legal action against the police later. Do not try to assault the officers, do not try to resist, because you will just make it worse for yourself. And not only that, the police officers are just doing their job. And like it or not, if you are arrested, you're arrested, and you won't get away. The police will eventually find you, and the longer you are at large, the worse it gets for you. So if you do find yourself in an unfortunate situation of having a police officer in front of you, asking you questions, wanting to stop and search you, and you find yourself under arrest, then simply just comply with the officer's requests. It's better for you in the long run. Do you think that police shouldn't be able to use force? Do you think police should be able to use more force? I'd love to know your comments. Thank you everybody so much for watching. I love doing this kind of content. If you want to support me further, please like and subscribe and share this video with someone you think you find it interesting. Please consider becoming a patron, where you get extra videos, more access, longer form videos, and maybe even support me by reading some of my crime fiction. Links for all that good stuff in the bio. You take care, have a great day.